So we see that the war has come to an end, and they are doing the Swadanjali, the final rites for all those who have departed, and quite a bit is put into this. And as this is happening, we see that Yudhishthira has this immense sense of sorrow. Immense sense of sorrow. So you must remember that Yudhishthira is quite soft at heart. And even though we see that while the battle was going on, he was good, right? He was present, he was focused, he fought the way a Kshatriya should fight. He was clear in his thinking. Once or twice they got emotional, but more or less he was in the moment. And then once the war is over, and we find this with all of us, during the event, sometimes we're okay. And like there's some adrenaline that helps us to get through it. And that whole fight and flight mode in us, or that survival instinct in us, and we're able to get through it. And then once the event is over, there's this sudden, it's like it sinks in exactly what's happened. And there's an overwhelming sense of emotion sometimes. Because now it's over. Sometimes I've noticed people will get sick after everything's over, like it's just like you kind of fall down. So it's more a physical outlet, or in this case, it's because also once the war's over, when you're sitting around quietly now it's more evident of how these people are missing in your life, right? Like when you're doing and doing and doing, you don't really notice. But now when you're sitting down for dinner, and all these people that would have sat with you are not there, there's this real sense of grief of missing these people. You must remember their family. Pretty much everyone in that battlefield was in some way connected to both sides, family or well-known over the years. And so Yudhishthira really doesn't deal with this well. And then on top of that, Kunti comes along, and Kunti tells Yudhishthira about Karna. And this is almost like the camel that breaks the straw's back. I mean, already he's feeling so much grief, and now he thinks he's killed his own brother. Well, the war has killed him, but pretty much they have killed him, right? And he's asked so many times, why didn't you tell? And Kunti explains that, look, I tried to convince him, Krishna tried to convince him, his mind was set, he didn't want y'all to know, we weren't able to talk him out of it. Then, it was pretty much destiny taking its course. There was nothing anyone could have done about it, and even you wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. But at this stage, it's like, but you didn't let me try. I've already lost so much, and now I've lost something I didn't even know I lost. Like, that's the feeling, right? Like, I knew I lost all that, but now I've even lost one brother. And the Pandavas were so close as brothers, so that relationship they really, really treasured. So in this grief, he decides, I shouldn't become king. It's my fault that the war happened. It's my fault that so many lives were lost. And so the best thing for me to do is repent and live a life of trying to purify myself from all the sins that I have collected. And so I should give the kingdom to Bhim, and I should go into the forest. Now, when he says this, Arjuna looks over at Krishna, because I don't know if you remember, this was Arjuna's sentence to him when he spoke against the Gandiva bow, and Arjuna had to insult him. And so probably at some point, Arjuna's feeling a lot of regret and guilt, because remember, he was doing it so he didn't have to physically hurt. But still, he did it really well. And that was one of the sentences he said. So it's not unnoticed by Arjuna that he's repeating the sentence. And this is another thing our mind does. when we go into sorrow, or whenever we go into any emotional state, that's mainly sorrow, it's not even our thought, but we remember something and we make it our thought. Like this was Arjuna's thought. Nowhere has Yudhishthira ever had this thought. And made Bhim the king like, this does not make sense. Bhim being the king would not work in any scenario. So, overwhelmed by emotion. Now, the fact that Yudhishthira is overwhelmed by emotion is understandable. When we lose someone we love, they will definitely 100% be. They have lost so many people. So understandable that their grief is extreme. So the first thing that happens is Bhim starts talking, which is interesting because Bhim is quite learned. And so first things first, he said, you know Dharma, it's your duty to become the king. Why are you talking about not being the king? And that's running away, and that's not acceptable. And you're letting your emotions get the better of you, and you should just become the king. And Yudhishthira doesn't like this. And it's not like Yudhishthira not to listen, but he's really just not listening at this point. So then Arjuna talks. And then Arjuna did, and here you really see how learned each one of them are. So Arjuna starts narrating the story about a king, which you all would have heard, who renounces, and then another renunciate thinks, you've renounced, but you're still living in a very palatial home, and you've got golden vessels, and you've got servants doting over you. How is this renouncing? You should be like me. I've really renounced. See, I've only got my kamandalu, and I'm just wearing this dhoti, and I don't have anything else. This your renouncing is fake renouncing. My renouncing is proper renouncing. And so the king says to him, okay, fine. I will renounce the way you renounce. Let's go. And so they walk to a significant distance. Let's say I have no concept of what this is, but they walked for like 25 minutes. And the non-king's renunciate says, oh, my kamandalu. I forgot my kamandalu in your tent. We have to go back and get it. The king looked at him and said, why? We've renounced, right? What does it matter? And he's like, but I only had that kamandalu. And so here he was expecting the king to give up the tent, the gold dishes, the servant, but he couldn't even give up the kamandalu. And so Arjuna is using this story to say that, look, you don't have to go in the forest. You can rule the kingdom, and you can have the spirit of renunciation, and that's significant and as good as actually renouncing, because renunciation doesn't have to do with the physical renunciation. It has to do with the attachment we hold for it in our mind. And actually, Yudhishthira, you already don't have attachment for all these pleasures and all this gold and all this wealth. So you being the king is not any kind of indulgence. So firstly, we see Arjuna's understanding to be very correct. We see he uses a good argument, an intelligent, logical argument, and uses scriptural references to be able to convince Yudhishthira. And thirdly, we see how well Arjuna knows Yudhishthira. But like I said, he's not listening. Who's not listening? Yudhishthira is not listening. And this is this grief, this immense grief that, this war has happened. So then Vedavyasa starts talking. Now, Vedavyasa is usually, if a saint Mahatma says something to Arjuna, Yudhishthira just listens. But his grief is so much. He counters even what Vedavyasa says. And, he keeps going back to, of course, the death of our sons, of course, the death of our loved ones. How can I possibly enjoy the kingdom after this? And the whole time, everyone keeps looking at Krishna, waiting for Krishna to say something. And Krishna is not saying anything, because Krishna is actually enjoying everybody else's thought process. right? Because Bhim spoken, Arjuna spoken, Vedavyasa spoken. It's like he's, and poor Nakula and Sahadev really don't say much. But finally, when Yudhishthira isn't even listening to Vedavyasa, Krishna does finally speak. Firstly, I will say what Vedavyasa says. So Vedavyasa, when he's talking to Yudhishthira, says, "Do not be concerned with the happiness or the distress that is being experienced by you, because both are ephemeral." Ephemeral? You don't hear this word outside of Vedanta. Ephemeral means passing. So basically, happiness comes, it goes. Sorrow comes, it goes. Happiness will come, it will go. Sorrow will come, it will go. And so Vedavyasa is trying to tell Yudhishthira that you're feeling sorrow right now. I understand you feeling sorrow right now, but don't make a decision based on the sorrow you're feeling right now, because it's going to go. Also, don't give so much importance and value to the sorrow that you're feeling right now, because it's not real, it's going to go. He doesn't use the word real because, of course, we feel our sorrow is real when we're experiencing it. Every single one of us, when we're experiencing it, we definitely think it's real, and we don't want anyone to tell us it's not real. We would get so annoyed. So he uses the word ephemeral. And then he elaborates and says that in time, we will keep meeting sorrow and we will keep meeting joy. Which is, this is the premise of how to live our lives. This too shall pass. However bad it is, remember, this too shall pass. However good it is, remember, this too shall pass. Like, know that time is constantly moving and we can never stop it, and things are going to constantly change with the flow of time. And so don't hold on to any of it, because time is constantly moving. It's like trying to hold on to water when a river is flowing. We just wouldn't. And so events are constantly flowing in time. And trying to hold on to events is the same as trying to hold on to water as a river is flowing. And so, this is such an amazing thing. I want to hold on for it. No, just never. This is so horrible. And unfortunately, we hold on even to what is sorrowful. Like we want to, sometimes it's this misplaced loyalty that, if I let go of it, I've let go of my loved one. Now, especially if it's a death. I have to keep feeling sorrowful to prove my love for that person. Or sometimes if it's some kind of failure in a job, so anything, then again, we feel we have to hold on to it because that's, that my pain has made me who I am. And we hear this. We hear that our pain has made us who I am, but we don't have to hold on to the pain to be who I am. Okay? I'm already who I am. Now the pain came, it went, it made me who I am. Now I am who I am. So I don't have to hold on to it. But we feel, I suffered. And so I need to hold on to the fact that I have suffered. And we feel a need to remind everybody else also. So this Vedavyasa really, really emphasizing that there's no point in holding on to any of it. So yes, the war has just happened. Yes, you are extremely sorrowful right now, but then don't hold on to this sorrow. And then lastly, he ends with this line, that there are only two kinds of permanently happy men. What are these? A complete fool who has not mastered his mind or senses, who will come to suffer later, or one who has completely mastered their mind and senses. So again, this is not telling Yudhishthira, don't grieve. This is telling Yudhishthira, yes, right this moment you are feeling what you are feeling. Don't hold on to it. And this is when the Bhagavad Gita says, do not grieve. That's what it's saying. And grief will be there, but don't hold on to the grief. Yudhishthira wasn't still ready to let go. And so finally Krishna speaks. And what Krishna says is exactly what he says in the Bhagavad Gita. Do not grieve. You will become ill. He doesn't say that in the Bhagavad Gita. You will become ill, he doesn't say in the Bhagavad Gita. But here he does. And this is why does the Gita tell us not to grieve to this extent? Actually, this line really needs to be highlighted. Like a normal amount of grieving, any amount of emotion takes a toll on the body, right? Every emotion takes a toll on the body. When we have fear, it's that flight, fight, and that adrenaline takes a toll on the body. When we angry, we all have experienced this. Like sometimes after being angry, we've clenched our jaws so hard that like you're sitting there for the next 3 days trying to relax those muscles because you held it so tight for so long. And the body is also like exhausted after being angry. The emotion takes a toll on the body. And the way the body is built is that the emotion will release a certain type of hormone based on what that emotion is to be able to prepare you for whatever you need to do based on the purpose of that emotion being made. Perfectly clear? I said it correctly, so it should be clear, but I'll give you an example anyway. So adrenaline is there when we have fear so that you can run and escape the thing that is threatening you, right? So anger, testosterone, I think, is what surges up. I'm not so good on my hormones, but you can research it. And that's so that you can feel stronger, because usually the purpose of anger is to defend righteousness. And so if you have to fight, you need that aggression in you. And the purpose of grief, the purpose of sadness is to accept that life is just not going to always give us what we want it to give us, or to accept some kind of loss that we are experiencing. And so even that releases a hormone, and even that takes a toll on the body. I'm sure you've experienced this. Like you're crying, and then you're exhausted. Like you did nothing else that day. You spoke about what's upsetting you and you cried. You have to go to sleep because you're so tired. Yeah. So it takes a toll on the body. Now, these emotions aren't meant to stay, right? Lion in the jungle, you're supposed to run away and then you're supposed to chill. You're not supposed to stay in fear. Aggression, you're supposed to, fight the lion for picking on your cub, and then you're supposed to chill. Sad, and then you're supposed to chill. Body is not meant to stay in that state of heightened emotion, which is producing those hormones, which is creating this ripple effect through the body, which causes so much imbalance. And so it's Krishna saying, if you stay in this extreme state of emotion, Yudhishthira, you're going to get sick. Now, Yudhishthira must have been really in such a frame of mind for Krishna to say that. And you must remember, Yudhishthira's mind is very strong. Very, very, very strong. He's done so much because he's done so much sacrifice. His mind is really strong. We cannot afford him making a simple power of any kind, and then it turns into illness. So is it saying you won't feel grief? No, you'll feel grief. And then what does he say here? Grieving cannot bring back those that you have lost. All of them are like objects obtained in a dream that disappear when you awaken. This is such a powerful statement. And then he concludes with, celebrate the virtuous life that they lived. So, firstly, grieving cannot bring them back. Intellectually, we understand this. Emotionally, we don't understand this. Whenever we're grieving something, we're still wishing that it didn't happen. Right? Like, so let's say I didn't get the job. I'm still wishing I got it. let's say a relationship didn't quite work out, or it's just a big fight in the relationship will continue to happen, but right now they're really angry with me. I'm still wishing they're not angry with me. I'm wishing we never had that fight. Yeah. And when someone's passed away, I'm wishing they hadn't. So the accepting that this is my reality is the way to overcome the worst part of grief. Because the worst part of grief is wanting it to be what it is not. And so Krishna is saying, by grieving, you can't bring them back. And unfortunately, we do think this. We think if I'm sad enough, they'll come back. It happens in relationships, but it even happens when people die. We think when I'm sad enough, they'll come back. I know that's not logical, but like I said, emotions do not have logic. And then the second sentence is, objects we have attained in dream disappearing when we wake up. This again is so profound. It means everything we attain in this lifetime is like an object we've attained in dream, which will disappear when we wake up. And here the waking up is the reality that I have no control. Yeah. So whatever makes me feel that it's disappeared is my waking up. And then of course the ultimate waking up is moksha, where I realize all of it was a dream. But even within the dream, we get these little jolts. Sometimes when we're sleeping, we do, right? We just suddenly jerk. All in life, these jerks to remind us that you're dreaming. Thinking you have all these things is dreaming. Thinking you're in control of any of this, you're dreaming. You would think we would dream pleasant dreams. No, we don't. And so when Krishna speaks, Yudhishthira doesn't have the heart to say no, but he still resists. Which brings me to a question that somebody messaged me. So many people are listening to the talks after the talks actually happen. And so they send their questions in later. And the question was, if Krishna had said to Arjuna, kill Ashwatthama, and it was a direct order, why didn't Arjuna listen? So if you've been listening to the Mahabharata, Arjuna doesn't listen many times. Many times he doesn't listen. When Krishna said, shoot Bhishma Pitama, he didn't listen. He was like throwing arrows like they were like, flowers. Bhishma Pitama was also annoyed that, come on, I want a real fight. And Arjuna was just, and then Krishna got so annoyed that Krishna jumped down from the chariot and ran. Remember? This is not the first time Arjuna doesn't listen. It's happened several times. And if this is bursting your bubble that Arjuna is a perfect devotee, he is not. He's a good devotee, but he's not perfect, which is why the Gita is good for us. Because we are Arjuna types of devotees. Sometimes we listen, sometimes we don't listen. When don't we listen? When we don't want to. And if Krishna had told Arjuna to cut off Drona's head, he would not have listened. He's arguing with Krishna that don't make Yudhishthira say a lie to trick Drona. Remember that? Never mind, not listen. Full on argued with Krishna. And of course, the worst time he didn't listen is Arjuna wanted to go and fight. Who were they? Some dudes. And then Krishna said, no, let's not leave the battlefield. And Arjuna was like, no, today I'm going to get them. And that's when Abhimanyu was killed. Abhimanyu was killed because Krishna spoke, but Arjuna didn't listen. So the question is, why didn't Arjuna listen? Because he's like you and me. When desire is too strong, he doesn't listen. And actually, Arjuna is a lot like Yudhishtira. He's soft. He's an excellent warrior, but he's not a ferocious one. You don't see Arjuna being ferocious on any occasion. Even when he fought Karna, who was the person he hated the most, when Karna was at his lowest, Arjuna stopped fighting to give him a chance to collect his weapon and to dust off the dirt and Krishna said, what are you doing? Arjuna was like, he's hurt. He's not ferocious. Arjuna's not ferocious. He's soft at heart. He doesn't like hurting people. And then Drona was killed and Ashwatthama was all that was left. And even though Ashwatthama forgot that the two of them loved each other, Arjuna remembered. Arjuna remembered the boy that he grew up with. And he didn't have the heart to kill Ashwatthama. And I thought, if that's Ashwatthama's fate, then it will happen. Let's take him back to Draupadi. Let Draupadi decide. And then he did the needful. He took off what the jewel that Draupadi said. And then Krishna cursed. And maybe that was Ashwatthama's fate. But had Arjuna listened, Ashwatthama would have been saved of all that suffering. Huh? But maybe he wasn't meant to be saved of all that suffering because what he did was horrendous. So greater will in the end. In the Mahabharata, it always comes down to greater will at the end. But why didn't Arjuna listen? Soft. But in this case, even Bhim didn't listen. So it really was greater will because Bhim's not soft. From the 5 Pandavas, Bhim's the most ferocious one. He's soft when it comes to his loved ones, but not when he's being a warrior. Okay, do not grieve. Finally, after much convincing, Krishna decides to tell Yudhishthira, since you're not convinced to take up the kingdom, let's go talk to Bhishma Pitama. He is the most learned. And then Yudhishthira says, but I should repent. I should do some prayashchitta. And then everyone agrees with him. Okay. Because when somebody is so upset and when their mind gets fixated on this, then there's no point in fighting. So yes, you should repent. What kind of repentance should you do for this kind of action? Let's go ask Bhishma Pitama. Now Krishna could have said, but Krishna wants them to go to Bhishma Pitama. And this whole idea of repenting is also something I want to talk about. So in this state of grief, so something has happened. It may not be death, just could be something has happened and we've gone into the state of grief. One of the emotions that we feel in grief is guilt or regret. Sometimes full-on guilt, I shouldn't have done that. And sometimes just regret, I wish I could have done that. And then that becomes guilt, right? And then if I did actually do something that I didn't want to do, I feel wasn't quite as, appropriate or elegant, then that guilt becomes even more. And we've spoken about this before. Guilt is the only useless emotion. All emotions have a purpose. Guilt, what? Well, of course it has a purpose. What's the purpose of guilt? It makes me feel good. What? I'm feeling terrible. Exactly. So I did something which I deem not to be good. So I should feel terrible about it. So it's making me feel good. Feeling bad for what I did makes me feel good. That's the purpose of guilt. Does it serve any other purpose? No. Now I'm feeling good, then I'm feeling bad. Am I going to improve? I just wallow in it. When there's fear, there's a threat and I have to get rid of the threat. When there's anger, there's an injustice and I have to get rid of the injustice. Okay? I'm feeling good about feeling bad. What am I going to do? There's no course of action. I'm actually already feeling good, then I'm feeling bad. So now there's no action. But it's a very tricky one because we don't realize that this is the purpose of guilt. So it gets away. It's sneaky. The mind is very sneaky. The mind gets away with doing this. Also, here, Yudhishthira, he's not just making himself feel good. Yudhishthira is very, very sensitive. He's actually reached the point of self-hate. He hates that he has caused the war. And he can't get that thought out of his head. Vedavyasa has told him, it's not your fault. You have followed Dharma. You did everything in your power to avoid the war. His brothers have told him. His brothers have reminded him of everything that Duryodhana and gang did that was horrible. But when that thought gets stuck in our head, it's my fault. He's not letting that thought go. This is that whole, like we hold on when we shouldn't hold on. He's not letting go of the thought that it's my fault. And so now, because it's my fault, I should get punished. This is an interesting thing. So in guilt, I don't always feel I should get punished. I feel bad, but I don't necessarily think I should feel punished, which is why guilt is not so useful. In self-hate, I will want to punish myself. So I've done something and I hate myself for doing it. And so now I need to be punished. Now this punishment, interesting. What kind of punishment will we give ourselves? People have given interesting punishments to themselves. Usually it's unhealthy because it's born out of hate. Usually. And does this punishment work? No, because it's constantly reminding me of what I did that's wrong and constantly making me live in the past, not allowing me to let go of it. And progress can only happen when I let go. So what should it do? Purify. How? Well, this is why Krishna took Yudhishthira to Bhishma. So this is such a beautiful scene. After Bhishmacharya got so brutally shot down with thousands of arrows, and he's been sleeping on that horrible bed of arrows for all this time, finally there's this really nice scene. So first, before they go to Bhishmacharya, they have to go back to Hastinapur. They go back to Hastinapur. There's a beautiful puja. He gets coronated as the king. He's still really upset, but finally they move into their new palaces. Very interesting that each one of them get their own palace. And Krishna stays in Arjuna's palace. And then the next morning they drive to see Bhishma Pitama, and Krishna drives in Arjuna's chariot. There's real partiality now, huh? It's really sweet, this relationship between Krishna and Arjuna. Although Krishna is doing all of this for Yudhishthira. So Yudhishthira walks into Arjuna's palace where Krishna is sitting on the sofa, and Krishna is sitting with eyes closed in meditative pose. And Yudhishthira is surprised because he's never seen this. There is a picture of Krishna meditating, very nice. And then he can't help himself. He disturbs Krishna's meditation and says, "What are you meditating on?" So rude. Never do that. This of Yudhishtira, who should know better. Don't ask somebody while they're meditating what you're meditating on. This is Yudhishthira's Yudhishthira's devotion to Krishna, right? That Krishna is meditating on something, it must be so beautiful or so important. And then his answer is so lovely. Krishna says, "These are the last few days that Bhishma Pitama will live. Soon the sun will turn its course, well, the earth will turn its course and will be in the summer solstice. Bhishma Pitama is preparing himself to leave, and so he has focused his mind single-pointedly on me, and so intense is his thought on me that it's pulling my mind to him." When our mind is intensely thinking of the Lord, it pulls the Lord to us. Bhishma Pitama's love was pulling Krishna's attention. And so Yudhishthira says, "Then let's make haste. Let's leave immediately." And so they get into their chariots and they get to where Bhishma Pitama is lying on the bed of arrows. And at this stage, all these brahmanas have gathered around him, chanting and keeping him company and giving him solace. And when Krishna and the Pandavas come, they all make way, and the Pandavas bow down, and they can't look up. They just can't look up at him in pain. They feeling miserable that he should be in so much pain. And then he himself says, "Yudhishthira, my sweet child, what you have gone through, nobody's had to go through. And I can feel your despair, but none of this was your fault, and you need to stop this self-condemnation." And then Krishna says to Bhishma Pitama, he has some questions, and before you leave this realm, you should impart the knowledge you have, or it will be lost. And Krishna has said this already 2-3 times. Like when Bhishma Pitama leaves, all his knowledge will leave. So before that, we need to learn it. This is dharma. Before leaving, make sure whatever knowledge you have is passed down. And it can be smallest things, but of course, this knowledge that Bhishma Pitama has is so incredibly significant. And even in over the years, when I have seen parents remembering children, or any family remembering a loved one that they lost, so often they'll remember, that they used to do this and I learned it from them. Or they used to do this and it's such a pity I didn't learn it from them. And that regret is also always, well, not always, but can be there. And then Bhishma Pitama's reply is just so sweet and just so sad. He says, "Krishna, I've been lying on this bed of arrows for days and weeks, and my body has become so weak and I can't think clearly, and all I can feel is pain. I cannot answer any of your questions." And this would be, it's not even him asking for pity. Like, can you imagine how many arrows have been shot through him? And all this time he's been enduring that pain. And still, while enduring that pain, he still can think intensely of Krishna. But his body has significantly weakened. And so Krishna says, "I grant you a boon that from this moment forth, you will feel no more pain." Why? So that you can share what you know. And then Bhishma Pitama said, "But when you are standing here, how can I share? You know far better than me. I should not speak. Students should not speak in front of Guru." Who's saying this? Bhishma Pitama is saying this too. I wanted to quote this because Guruji told me that I have to speak. And then when I was going to say no, he said, I spoke in front of Gurudev. But Bhishma Pitama has very clearly said here that students should not speak in front of Guru. But then Krishna insists, and then he guess he does. So I guess Guruji will throw that in my face. So we won't say anything to Guruji. Anyway, they don't say anything to him. Okay, so Krishna literally strokes Bhishma Pitama's head and says, I know your devotion to me. I can feel your devotion to me. And that's why you have been able to see my Vishwarupa darshan. So Bhishma Pitama was able to see it. This whole time he's lying on the bed of arrows, he's been able to see Krishna in his true form. And Krishna even says, I don't show him. But because I know the depth and purity of your love, you have seen it. And I grant you that state from which you will never return. Which means Krishna is granting him moksha, not heaven. Everyone else in the Mahabharata got to go to heaven. Huh? Here Bhishmacharya is being granted moksha. So before you go, I want the world to know your glories. So you will answer Yudhishthira's questions. Now look at Krishna, huh? He wants the world to know the devotees' glories, not his own glories. He could have answered all these questions. He doesn't answer. He makes Bhishma Pitama. And then Bhishma starts crying. And he starts remembering all these incidences where he has interacted and engaged with Krishna. The whole time Yudhishthira is wiping his tears away. And then Krishna says, now you are tired. We will come back tomorrow. So they go and they come back next morning. And Krishna says, how are you feeling? And basically Bhishma Pitama says, great. Because of course, the minute Krishna said, from this moment forth, you will no longer feel pain. He no longer felt pain, and it's almost like his body rejuvenated, and his voice was now once again strong, and he could think absolutely clearly. It said that he can see all past, present, and future simultaneously. Like that's how clear his mind was. And so he starts answering all of Yudhishthira's questions. And we're going to be seeing a little bit of what he says. But the first thing he says to Yudhishthira is, Yudhishthira, why didn't you listen to Krishna? Like you should have just listened. If Krishna said something, you should have just listened. He should be saying this to Arjuna also. And right now he's talking to Yudhishthira. So what's he saying? He's saying it to each and every one of us, because all of us do this. All of us do this. You know, we ask somebody who's wise, or I've even had people tell me, I'm not asking you because I know what you're going to say and I don't want to do it, so I'm not asking you. We don't listen. So what is Bhishma Pitama saying? Listen. So he says, can one suffer when he has a well-wisher such as Krishna? Sounds like such a simple question, right? Can we suffer when we have a well-wisher like Krishna? Now, which one of us don't have Krishna as a well-wisher? Which basically means, why are you suffering? Isn't it your own foolishness? Just listen to him already. If he's there as your well-wisher, willing to give you moksha, he's just given Bhishma Pitama moksha. Then really, what are we doing? Why are we so stuck in that one thought, which Yudhishthira stuck in that thought? It was all my fault. I should get punished. I should go live in the forest. Why are we going to hold on to all these thoughts when he's saying otherwise? He's saying you are Brahman. Krishna is, and never mind you are Brahman, right? Krishna here has told you, Yudhishthira, you were doing your duty, you did what needed to be done. Yeah. They sing. I mean, of course, emotions get the better of us. Why isn't Yudhishthira listening? Yudhishthira is not listening out of attachment or desire or, ignorance. It's just emotions gotten the better of him. And understandable, it was a horrendous war. And he is soft-hearted. And so, when the war's literally just finished 2 days ago, give him time to take a breath and get his bearings. But already by day 3, you'll see he's listening again. But when emotions get the better of us, then even someone as amazing as Yudhishthira, who actually already knows that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, isn't able to let go of his thought and surrender to Krishna. But he's done it 3 gazillion times, huh? Throughout the entire Mahabharata, Krishna says he does. We've seen it already. And even here, he's come to Bhishma Pitama because Krishna has said, but in that mind, that thought was still lingering. And so Krishna used a little bit indirect approach. Even that the Lord will do. You're not listening to me? Okay, come, let's take you to mommy, daddy, grandpa. Basically, that's what he did, right? Bhishma Pitama is grandpa. It's like, okay, you'll listen to him then. Listen to this one. Listen to doctor, listen to lawyer, listen to this one, listen to that one. Listen to someone. When Bhishma Pitama describes Krishna so beautifully, Krishna is that divine which is unknowable, who controls everything. He is the energy of time. Interesting, I'm not describing, we in the beginning of the Mahabharata series, that long, yada, you remember this? That old Mahabharata, not the new one? And then there's that narration in that very deep, thick voice. And in that narration, it talks about Kal, time, and how time keeps moving. But in that narration, this line should have been there. Krishna itself is time. Could do a whole class on that, but we won't. We will confront. And then he says that Supreme Lord, which is nameless and formless, decided to take the form of Krishna and walks around as he uses the clan name. Basically a person like you and me. But don't let that fool you, Yudhishthira. In your familiarity with Krishna, you've forgotten who he is. Yudhishthira knew. Grief made him forget. And also familiar, right? You're seeing him every day. You start taking the person for granted. He'll be there only. I'll call, he'll pick up. I'll scream in pain, he'll come running to help me. We take it, after a while, we start taking for granted. We forget the magnitude of their being and their brilliance. So then Yudhishthira asked a whole lot of questions, and this goes on for a good 5 days, question-answer session between Yudhishthira and Bhishma Pitama. And it's during this time that what he spoke is used in management seminars, because he did a lot of how to rule the state and, all dharma, duty of a king, duty of a leader, duty of a husband, duty of a Brahmin, duty of a Kshatriya, duty of a... He covered a lot of things, huh? Like, it was like, before you die, you're going to tell us everything you know. He really told everything he knew. And then he also answered questions on moksha. And this is the wow bit. For him to answer the questions on moksha was, and he did. He learned from Guru Brahaspati, who is the Guru of the heavens. So he did have a great understanding of it. And in and through all of that is the teachings of the Vishnu Sahasranam. So this is incredibly beautiful. And it's so beautiful that this month is Purushottam Mass, and one of the sadhanas that we have to do is Vishnu Sahasranam, and that we are doing this section of the Mahabharata at the time when we should be talking about Vishnu Sahasranam. So in the narration of, how to purify my mind, because remember, this whole punishment concept is not very conducive. It holds us. And then it's also very fear-based. And so then it creates emotion again. We've already seen that emotion is exhausting. So the idea of, okay, I have wronged, I have shortcomings. So to purify myself so that I no longer continue to have those shortcomings, right? It's not, I have sinned and that may be punished for my sins. It's, may I sin no more. That's the important part. We get very stuck on, I should be punished for my sins. I don't know if that's a Christian concept that has filtered through, or if that's just human nature that we get stuck in, I should be punished for my sins. And then we know very clearly that the scriptures have told us that the sin itself punishes us. Gurudev's quote that we are punished by the sin. And so, Yudhishtira at this point already, man, so punished. Look how tormented he is at having to face all those debts, and he had to do the death rites for so many relatives. Already punishment, already he is missing of them, already his sense of, love that he feels. He's already feeling enough pain. There's no more need for any more punishment. But the idea is, what we really need to hold on to is, let me sin no more. Let my mind be completely pure, so that now what I am doing is a reflection of Krishna's glory and divinity. So the question starts with, and this is how the Vishnu Sahasranam really starts. So he has asked, he has asked, what's the best way to purify myself? And we're going to see this as one of the questions, but I'm just going to do it first. He says, chanting the name of the Lord. And then there's a question here somewhere. Yudhishthira asked the question about, what are these, which are the names of the Lords that we should chant? And so there's three main Sahasranams that are considered to be the most powerful and the most purifying. And so the first is the Vishnu Sahasranam, which is probably the most well-known. Well, it depends in which circles you're hanging out. But I guess even if you're not hanging out in a spiritual circle, Vishnu Sahasranam is fairly well-known. If you're hanging out in the spiritual circles, you know the other two. The second is Lalita Sahasranam, which is 1,000 names of Devi. And the third one is the Shiva Sahasranam. And in context of these three being mentioned as the Sahasranams, the three most powerful to chant, to purify, and this is what we should do to cleanse ourselves and to have that mindset of sin no more. At some point, Yudhishthira asked about the Shiva Sahasranam to Bhishma Pitama, and Bhishma Pitama says, the only person here qualified to speak anything about the Shiva Sahasranam is Sri Krishna. And at that point, Krishna teaches the Shiva Sahasranam to the Pandavas. And then Yudhishthira asks Krishna about the Vishnu Sahasranam. And then Krishna says, no, I will not tell you about the Vishnu Sahasranam. Bhishma Pitama will tell you about it. And I guess that's like too much self-praise, that, give his own Sahasranam. So it's like, when my devotee give my praises, I give it looks that bad for me to give my own praises, yeah. And so Bhishma Pitama teaches the Vishnu Sahasranam. And this whole side section of Krishna teaching the Shiva Sahasranam doesn't make it into the main teachings because the main teachings in this section is Bhishma teaching Yudhishthira. So that conversation gets recorded. And then there are many devotees who will say that Shiva Sahasranam gives you worldly success, Lalita Sahasranam gives you power of mind and Shakti, and Vishnu Sahasranam is the one that gives you moksha. Now this is Ishtadevata bias. Do you all remember what Ishtadevata bias is? All of us think our Ishtadevata is the best. As you should. Your Ishtadevata is the best. Which Sahasranam is the best? They said three. means three are the best. These three are all considered extremely powerful. However, this is not a but. It's not. They all three equally powerful. Lalita Sahasranam is very hard to pronounce. So for someone who is a little bit not so sophisticated with the Sanskrit, Vishnu Sahasranam is definitely easier to read. And possibly that's why it got popular. Possibly, I don't know. Right? But having learned the Sahasranams, Lalita Sahasranam is definitely the most difficult to pronounce and to read. Those names are seriously long, but beautiful. When you hear it, very, very beautiful. And the meaning is also beautiful. The Shiva Sahasranam is also beautiful. Also not as hard to chant, but is not as popular as Lalita and Vishnu Sahasranam for some reason. And maybe, like I said, depending on which circle you're hanging. Usually when Shiva devotees are doing Upasana, they tend to do the Veda mantras of Rudra and Chamakam more than the Shiva Sahasranam. Point is, chant. What? Whichever is your Ishtadevata. And chant their names. Here it's specific names. And we chant just one name, okay, no problem. But the Sahasranam is considered japa equivalent to chanting just the one name. The Sahasranam has definitely the ability to purify by the rhythm of the Sanskrit and the vibrations created by it. So, how does the Vishnu Sahasranam start? Yudhishtira asked the question, Kim ekam devatam lokaha? Who is the greatest Lord on the earth? The answer to this is whoever is your Ishta Devata. What does Bhishma Pitama answer? Pavitranam, Pavitranam, Pavitram yo, Mangalanam, cha Mangalam, Devatam, Devatanam, cha Bhutanam yo, Avyayam Pitaha. That which is the most purifying of all the purifying, that which is the most auspicious of the auspicious, that which is the God of all gods, and the Father of all beings. Did it give a name? Father was a bit gender biased, but you know. Grammar limitations, I guess. Actually, the translation is not grammatically made. I guess when we translated earlier days, we didn't use he, she. By default, they just wrote he. But the grammar doesn't indicate masculine. Devatanam, Devatanam cha, yeah. Bhutanam cha. It doesn't. Pita, sorry. Masculine. But Bhishma has Ishta Devata biased. We know who Bhishma loves. Kim vyapyekam parayanam. In whom shall we take refuge? And so, yeah, Paramam yo, Mahatapa, Paramam yo. Let's repeat it, Mahatapaha, Paramam yo. Mahatejaha, Mahatapaha, Mahabrahma, Paramam me Parayanam. So, who should we take refuge in? That who is the most effulgent. Tejaha is effulgent. He who is controller of all. Who is the supreme truth. And who is the supreme goal. Now, each of these verses, like we can take classes like we do on Bhagavad Gita on all these verses, what they mean. But most of you have been listening to some extent, so you all get the general sense. That which is the most purifying, that which is the most auspicious, that which is the controller of all, that which is effulgent, that which is truth, that which is our ultimate goal. Stunvantam kam prapnun yaha manavaha shubham. By glorifying whom do we attain auspiciousness, shubham. And then again, Jagat Prabhum Deva Devam Anantam Purushottamam. Anantam is endless. Stunvam Nama Sahasrena Purushasya Stata Stitaha. So this is where the Sahasranam gets introduced. So Yudhishthira asked, glorifying whom do we become auspicious? Because already we know that by chanting, which the question comes, we can purify ourselves. So who should we chant? What should we chant? And so he says here, that who is the most supreme. And here he says, Vishnu, Purushottaha. And you can do so by chanting the Sahasranam. And so then I'm just going to do one more question. There's actually 3 questions, but I'm just going to do this one now. For dharma sarva dharmanam bhavanta paramomataha. What is our greatest dharma? So what is the duty that we should do in this lifetime? Kim japan muchante janahu. All beings should chant. Janma samsara bandhana. To be able to be liberated out of the cycle of life and death. This is actually our duty. To chant is our duty. Maybe we haven't been told this so clearly before, right? In Bhagavad Gita, it's not as much emphasized. Knowledge is emphasized in the Bhagavad Gita, and that is the greatest tapas we can do. And that is, knowledge is the most purifying, without doubt. But even for the mind to be able to receive that knowledge, we need to purify the mind, and therefore we chant. And you would have already experienced this. You know, you come, we do 100 chalisas, and then that just rings in your head for the next 2-3 days. You come and there's somebody sings a bhajan and it really touches your heart, and you're singing it for weeks together. Yeah. And so chanting and music has this way of lingering, and so it purifies because it lingers with that sense of bhav. And for those of, you know, we've all chanted, but even just this Tuesday when we did the Sahasranam, you can really feel energized. You feel energized after the chanting. It's likened to a workout. You know, when you go to the gym and you do the workout and the endorphins are released and you feel life is good. When you do a full-on chant, 45 minutes, endorphins are released and you feel life is good. It's exactly the same. Yeah. But you go to the gym, body gets strong, which is very good, please go. But when you chant, mind becomes pure. Why are you laughing? What was it funny? Going to the gym doesn't make mind pure. In fact, you can get more obsessed with vanity and you can get preoccupied with, you know, somebody else's body. No need. So come and chant, because then mind gets purified, at least. So go gym, no problem. But also continue to please chanting. Stop laughing, you're making me laugh. I'm being very serious here. Okay, so then, since chanting is our duty, why? Because it's our duty to get out of the cycle of birth and death. Even that we don't see as our duty. We think, oh yeah, that will be nice. No, not that will be nice. It's your duty to get out of the cycle of birth and death and return back to divine state. So then, in that essence of chanting is your duty and it helps you to escape the cycle of life and death, Bhishma Pitama chants the Vishnu Sahasranam. And the Sahasranam is beautiful. Actually, it's interestingly that it's not 1,000 names, even though I have been advertising it's 1,000 names. Gurudev has explained it in his commentary. It's only 90 names. 74 are repeated twice, 14 are repeated thrice, and 2 of them are repeated 4 times. And so this repetition of the names is what makes it japa. But also the idea of all these different names is indicators. And so what's really super beautiful about the Vishnu Sahasranam is that from a sheerly devotional point of view, you can see a word, Gopada, and you can think of, you know, blue boy, Krishna, herding the cows in Vrindavan, with his curly locks swaying in the wind, and his mischievous eyes teasing the gopis, playing his flute, bringing joy to all, and your heart's already full. But Gopala also means one who is able to control the senses. And so if you come in as a devotee, you just want to feel the presence and the beauty and the glory of the Lord. And if you come in as a person who wants knowledge, jnana, then the purpose of the Lord or the ultimate divinity is in being able to control the senses, which take us outwards. And we want to be able to use them and understand the world outside and interact with the world outside, but we don't want them controlling us. So we want to be able to rein them in at will and be masters. And so for a jnani, the word Gopala is aha, reminder to control my senses and to stay focused on that which is shreyas. Shreyas meaning higher good. And for a devotee, oh, Gopala, right? That's my Krishna who's so cute. And so the Vishnu Sahasranam is for both Bhakti Marg and Jnana Marg. And we know Adi Shankaracharya had written a commentary on Vishnu Sahasranam, which is brilliant. And he wrote it at the age of 8. What are we doing with our lives, really? So this month, as I mentioned, Purushottam Mas, this is one of the sadhanas. And even this month came about so beautifully. And so every day of the week gets allocated to a devata. Every month of the year got allocated to a devata. And so Shravan was going on just before this started, which is allocated to Shiva. And so every month was allocated usually to the aspects of the sun, the different aspects of the sun. And then this extra month got created by all these extra days, and it didn't have a devata. And so the month felt really sad because it kind of got rejected and nobody gave it any importance. And people said it's like a useless month because it's no devata to help you fulfill your desires. Because the devata in charge of the month is the one that makes sure that whatever is supposed to happen happens, but nobody's making sure this everything happens here. And so this month went to the Lord and said, I'm being ignored. And the Lord said, I'll be your devata. And don't worry, not one festival will happen in your month. The whole month will be a festival. This is again, you see the Lord, like nothing gets left, nothing is rejected, nothing is ignored. And so every day of this month is considered to be highly, highly auspicious. And the Devata is Purushottam, Supreme Lord, not Devata, Supreme Lord. And so, but being Supreme Lord and not a Devata, in this month, selfish actions don't work. Which is why in this month, we're supposed to do more tapas and sadhana. Because Purushottam, you'll get the results of that. Selfish actions, you won't get the results in this month. Which is such good advertising. Like, don't bother doing selfish actions this month, it won't work. So what are you going to do the whole month? Tapas. I love it. I love how intelligent the rishis are. It's also true. We shall pause here. The sadness is over. We get to enjoy satsanga. Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukhabhag bhavet, asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma tangamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamida Purnamada Purnamada Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om. Hari Om.